So we're live with the LFC Forum podcast. Today we have Fergs, Miracles Are Possible, that's Paul, and we also have CrackerJacker joining us as well. Gentlemen, bad game today, unfortunate result. It was really a poor result on all counts. So let's just dive straight into it. What were your thoughts on today's performance? And we'll get into all the other ramifications through the rest of the podcast, but talk to me about your original thoughts on today's podcast. Why don't we start with you, Hassan?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but the defense failed Alberto Moreno today. I'm not sure how to describe what's going on with our back. We've conceded, I think, 15 goals away from home and 1 at home. It's 2017 and David Lovren is still our starting center back. Simon Mignolet today, God help him. And I'm not sure, I wouldn't allow the players to take the team bus back to Liverpool. I'll just tell them, sort yourself out, get an Uber back or something. It's just, I've never felt this angry, maybe, after a Liverpool game, due to just how obvious our flaws are and the idiocy of the goals we've conceded today. Spurs didn't do anything. They didn't even, I don't think Spurs performed that well. Yet they scored 4, they could have scored 6 or 7. That sums it up for me.
Paul?
I can't really disagree with any of that, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't even a vintage Spurs performance, as Hassan said. It was just how and what's happening for us is we're paying the price for how complacent we've been in the market. If you want to go into yet another league campaign with Dejan Lovren as your starting centre-back, if you want to go into a new league campaign with Simon Mignolet in goal, this is what's going to happen. You go to the great stadia, you go and play the great teams, and Spurs, make no mistake, have become a great team. They're not going to be able to compete. And if they're going to be able to compete, it's going to be the exception. It's not going to be the rule. I went into this not expecting a great result. I'm not surprised by the result. I'm not even that upset by it. It feels like exactly what we should have expected when we went into this season with the players that we have. Dejan Lovren bottling that header, Matip heading it straight out to Dele Alli, Simon Mignolet rushing off his line when there was absolutely no need for it. It's elementary stuff. It's the kind of thing that, Dejan Lovren's 27? Matip and Simon Mignolet are similar age. They shouldn't need to be taught how to defend the most basic situations. And if they do need to be taught, then they shouldn't still be at the club. We're paying now for a summer where we didn't do anywhere near enough, where we went into the season saying, all right, well, this is the team we're going to go into it with. Let's see what happens. Well, this is what happens.
Fergs?
The result is a lot worse. After watching the game, there was a couple of sort of key moments that could have made it a little easier to stomach. The 2 Lloris saves, which could have made the game interesting had we have scored those. Other than that, we're just going over and over and over the same things because it's the same things happening. Individual mistakes from the same people of the game, or worse. And I'm getting sick of saying it, to be honest. And I'm sure other people are sick of watching it. But the first goal, nation of it's Lovren mainly. I think Mignolet has to bear some of the blame there because he could have got to that and didn't. Although I guess you could blame the whole back line there for not doing anything and just standing still. The back line, Bar Moreno today were pretty abysmal. Midfield was crap. Henderson was crap, and that's huge for me to say that. But yeah, today was just not a good day at the office, point blank.
Well, first and foremost for me, I was a little bit upset at seeing the starting lineup again. I couldn't believe that we had continued to persist with this situation where Coutinho is again playing on the left side when we have a winger in Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Klopp came to his senses. Obviously, it was a point where it took two big mistakes from Lovren for him to come to his senses, but he came to his senses and he realized Coutinho goes to midfield, and then we play Oxlade-Chamberlain out wide. Again, I didn't think Oxlade-Chamberlain had a great game, but he had a decent game. I mean, he showed flashes of pace. He showed a keen willingness to attack, and it certainly puts Coutinho in his more favorable position, and certainly makes our balance a lot better. So I was a little bit surprised to see that in the starting, to see what happened over there. As far as the goals went, Mignolet probably shouldn't have come out for that first one. If he's going to come out, he needs to be able to get to the ball. He was nowhere near the ball and basically left the goal gaping wide open for Harry Kane, and you can't do that to the best striker in the Premier League and probably the best striker in the world right now. I think that's quite evident. Maybe, people keep wanting to downplay Harry Kane or say he's not as great as we want to think that he is. He's great. He's phenomenal. He's terrific. He's the best striker in the world for me right now. The second goal, well, that I don't want to talk about that one. That was just rubbish. But overall, it was individual mistakes, poor performance, lack of, again, it looked disjointed. Firmino was ineffectual in that role. I don't see why we keep persisting with him in the false nine. Just play a 4-2-3-1, play your best players, and then basically let a real number 9 do what a real number 9 does, which is play on the shoulder, be in the box for headers. I think somebody brought it up in the match thread, is that where's our number 9? He should be getting on the end of these crosses, or he should be at least in the box to attack the crosses. Where is our number 9? And it just speaks to the deficiencies in this team. I want to talk a little bit about the defending because, people have mentioned the setup. And you don't need great defenders to at least be competent when it comes to defending. So, yes, there were a lot of individual mistakes here, but there are a lot of this. I mean, this is a problem with the system too. This cannot just be about individuals. I mean, if a team like Leicester can win the Premier League with Huth and Wes Morgan as their 2 center backs, surely we can do a little bit better than the defending that we're doing right now. So, Hassan, what are your thoughts about this defense, just from Klopp's setup, the way we, just the overall, the nature of our defending?
I think it's still a personal thing. Besides the system, when you have the system, it exposes you to more chances. But that means that you need better players back there who can deal with that. I mean, Klopp said, name me 5 center backs who would do a better job than Matip and Lovren. And probably I can name 5 from Southampton and Newcastle who would be better than him, or at least as good as him. So he can't convince any one of us that Lovren is the benchmark for center backs, and he can't convince anyone that Van Dijk is the only center back on this planet who would improve us. Now, in terms of the setup, I think we lack a defensive midfielder as well. Henderson, not good today. Chan is better as a DM than him, and I think Klopp should wake up to that fact. What he did say today was interesting in the press conference. He said, if I was playing, that second goal wouldn't go in, which is as big a statement of basically derision he could have said about Lovren that, anyone could have said. And I mean, at the end, he looked desolate. I've never seen that look on his face. He looked like someone who's lost hope in this team. But this setup, I mean, it doesn't make sense with the players we have. We should be a bit tighter, but at the same time, I mean, you can understand it from the perspective of our attack is our best attribute. So might as well gear your team to that. And which is why I keep on saying, play Sturridge, I play Coutinho next to Chan in midfield, and just add another way, add Oxlade-Chamberlain or Mane when he comes back, and play Firmino off the striker. Because there's no point to trying to defend if we can't defend. We might as well attack more and try to win games 5-4 or whatever.
Fergs, I know you have issues with with the system. I know you want to see us play 3 in midfield. So what is your thoughts on that?
To be honest, at this point, dude, I don't care who we play. Just the system has to change. Either the system or the way he sets it up and the individual sort of instructions and for the role that they're given. Because I can't believe at any point, for any team in the professional game, even talking sort of blue square, whatever, like at no point would a team ever be told to not have somebody on the edge of the box from a set piece coming in to be able to mop things up if you get a nick and it falls there. Like that goal from the Matip header just disgusted me. Like I can't. I'm that frustrated. I can't put into words really what I'm trying to get out. I can't get it out. It's just that it's very, very naive, and it was disgusting really for a professional team, a Premier League team, to be defending that way. And that was kind of the case for the majority of the day today. Like Lovren, yeah, he got hooked for it, whatever, but he shouldn't. It's not something new with him. We know that's what he's going to do. So why is he still there? Why are we still relying on him? Like, I think honestly, other than the first one, which you said maybe Mignolet should not have come out for that. I think if he was awake for it, he could have been there first. But even if you scrap that one, he probably still should. Like his positioning was good for them. He just didn't make as good an effort as he should have done. He didn't save them. I mean, Lloris had no right to be saving that Coutinho shot at all, but he did. Like the ball, the Salah shot that came through 3 bodies, through people's legs, still got his leg too. Like, he shouldn't really be saving that, but he did. We don't have anybody there to be making those stops. Now, yeah, okay, Miggs has saved us some points in the past, but no. Just, they need dropping. I don't care who for at this point. So, as Hassan just said there about the Coutinho in a 2-man midfield thing, and I think Paul's probably going to say something about that afterwards as well. At this point, I don't care. Put that if that's what people need and that's what we need to be securing points, do it. I don't care. Like I would quite happily watch 4-3 games like we played against Newcastle in the 90s every game. Like regardless of what that would do to my nerves, if it just means we pick up points, because I can't watch many more performances like that.
Paul?
We need to make some really visible, obvious break with what we're seeing at the moment. When you put Henderson, Milner, and Jan in the same midfield, you are limiting yourself. And if you persist with that, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. A poor performance one week is going to feed into a poor performance the next, and so on. It's the ideal position right now to say, all right, this has not been working. What else can we do? What else suits the personnel that we have? And an obvious solution is to not put 3 of those midfielders on the pitch at any one time. Do something different. Have a bit of positivity and make a positive change. A 4-2-3-1 system could be that. You take Henderson, you hook Henderson off, or you take Milner out of the team, or Wijnaldum or Chan or someone. Yeah, okay, Coutinho's never been a number 8 in a 2-man midfield. But the advantage is we don't have to see that midfield ever again. We can have Coutinho there, and we can have him next to one of those players instead of having to somehow play off 3 of them. So that's the first change I'd make. I'd probably put Chan. I thought Chan was terrible today. I didn't even think he was great against Maribor, to be perfectly honest with you. A lot of people said he was good, but I didn't see it. He's still really rash. He's the personification of a yellow card. But I'd still probably, purely because defensively, he's the least bad out of the midfielders we've got. I'd probably put him in a 2-man midfield with Coutinho. And, okay, you'd probably lose that little bit of forward momentum out of Coutinho. But at least we'd have a midfield that on average is better than Henderson, Milner and Chan, which is what we had today. Then you could have Firmino behind Sturridge. You could have Oxlade-Chamberlain out left. I thought he was quite bright today. He wasn't outstanding, but you saw flashes of real ability, and he began to show what he can offer us and how he can impact on the way we play. Put him out left, put Salah out wide. Something different, some obvious switch from what we're seeing at the moment, which is just dire, the same sort of stilted, laborious performances that don't go anywhere. Some break with all that and change the system, show that you're doing something different, because that's going to give the players more belief and it will play to our strengths more. That's exactly what we need to do right now.
Yeah, we need to make a change. Again, I want to touch on something that Hassan said regarding Klopp's post-match comments regarding Lovren. If that's what he said, I don't see how Lovren gets back into this team. And just on the basis of the performance, I don't see how Lovren should be getting back into this team. He needs to be hooked, and if possible, sold in January. There's no point in persisting with him. This has run its course now. Either play Klavan or play Joe Gomez in the center back position, and let those two be who you're going to partner with Joel Matip. And Matip is another one who, I gotta say, he's disappointing me now week in, week out. He's getting to the point where I don't necessarily see his position as being safe either. So, you know, we certainly have to address the defending from a personnel point of view, as well as from a system point of view. And we'll talk a little bit more about the future in a little bit. But I just don't see how Lovren gets back into this team, nor should he get back into this team at this point, because quite frankly, he's not making strides. He's not making improvements. He's just looking terrible. And I want to touch on something that Fowey said in I think it was at halftime regarding the manager, is that we have a manager now who's been here and he's not implemented anything. And I was studying a few weeks ago for my GRE, and while I was taking a break, I was thinking about this exact same point. Like, what exactly have we implemented? And it's actually nothing. Now we've gotten better attacking wise, but have we really implemented anything, or is it just more scattered chaos? Is it just good attacking players doing what good attacking players do, which is being able to?
We haven't got better attacking wise. We're doing the same shit we did under Rodgers. Like, if you look at the seasons we had under Rodgers with SAS up front, we're doing the exact same thing. Like, when we get ahead, we tend to dominate teams. We can put a good few goals past them. We're exciting to watch in an attacking sense for the majority of the time. Yeah. But again, we just ship too many goals. It's just the same thing. We've just changed players. Sure. Like, it's nothing has changed at all. Right. At all.
So that's kind of the point. So we've really not changed anything about the way we play. The other day I was pointing out that majority of our players are still, ones that we have from the Brendan Rodgers era and some from the Dalglish era, like Henderson, etc. But most of these players, Andy Robertson is not playing. I don't know what's happened to him. I can't understand the point of him being a signing. Karius is not playing. Joel Matip is the only real player who's starting games, who's a Klopp player, and Wijnaldum didn't play today. So this falls on Klopp's head, and the fact that we've not really improved the personnel in this team, and we are still playing a system that's scattered, devoid of real ideas, and can actually be shut down quite easily by a team that's well drilled defensively. So what are you guys' thoughts on this idea that we've really not implemented anything, like in the number of years that Klopp's been here? Paul?
We've flirted over Klopp's time at the club with some really positive attacking play. And there were times last season, especially at this point last season, where I thought, hang on a mo, we could be in with a shout of the league here, because the way we were playing was really excellent. And then January came along and results stopped going our way, heads started to drop. and everything seemed to regress. Whatever happened in January, we haven't recovered from that. Despite the fact that he's had all this time to go into the market and to get the kind of players that he wants, and also to coach the players he's got. We talked about, coaching players like Lovren, coaching players like Matip. I don't see any evidence of that on the field. Whatever we were doing last season, at this stage last season, it's nowhere to be seen this season. So the overall effect is that we're more or less where we were when Klopp arrived, with the obvious addition of Mane and Salah, who were great, but that's not enough. We simply haven't kicked on anywhere close to the way we really should have done. We've had the time and the resources to build a team that we can look at and think, yeah, this is going to go places. But the personnel that we've got at the moment, it's impossible to imagine them having a significant say in any race for any silverware this season or the next. It isn't going to happen. That's not within them. And for as long as we persist with the personnel that we have, and as long as Klopp deludes himself, you've got to use that word, he deludes himself into thinking that he can turn them into Liverpool players, we're going to be stuck right where we are. We'll qualify for the Champions League now and then. It will be the exception rather than the rule. And we need to learn from the example of exactly the kind of team that we play today. Because they, about 7 or 8 years ago, started to finish in the Champions League spots. And they didn't look embarrassed to be there. They weren't humbled by the fact that they were Tottenham Hotspur, not traditionally one of the great English clubs, happening to suddenly play above themselves. They went out with the attitude, we deserve to be here and we're going to stay here. What we've done over the last couple of months since we've been in the Champions League is almost look embarrassed to be in the Champions League. Like, we're almost happy to admit that it's that level above us. Spurs haven't gone into any season since they started to become a force in England thinking that way. That's what sets a team like that, who's really going places, apart from a team like us, who at the moment is going absolutely nowhere.
Hassan?
I still think Klopp is the right man, but I think his problem, and it's something I touched on, I think, in our first podcast, he likes to have a good relationship with his players. He likes to have that sort of camaraderie. And I think that means it's tough for him to decide to cut loose, which is why he had a director of football at Dortmund who would just say, right, you're out. And would just say, we need a centre back, we need a goalkeeper, we need a defensive midfielder, and another midfielder, and just get it sorted. And it's not like it takes that much money to do so. Spurs have half the wage bill we have. It's not a money thing. Sevilla have won really a lot of trophies for a team that were relegated back in 2001. Since then, they've turned it over. Although this season, they've looked shaky since Monchi left. But it's just disappointing to see us just going like, oh, we are satisfied with this team we have right now. And it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to be satisfied with what we have. And there are so many players who can make an impact for us defensively. And even arguably as a striker, that would just make us better. They can make us better. I can name a centre-back with Lokomotiv Moscow, I'm not even kidding, Fergs, who would be a starter for us and probably our best defender. That's not the situation we should be in. And it wouldn't cost them that much. That's the part that really, this is not us trying to say, right, I know Toni Kroos is leaving, we need a replacement. We're replacing Henderson and Chan and Wijnaldum. That isn't hard to do. And our setup, organization-wise, needs to change. Because it's not a money thing. It's FSG aren't willing to be so assertive in winning to drive this team forward. the director of football, Edwards, isn't effective enough to do so. And Klopp doesn't seem like the sort of manager who is ready to make the tough decisions regarding players incoming and outgoing. And when you have that combination, you're going nowhere. Benitez changed the side the first summer because he was like, no, I won't have this. Houllier changed the side and we led to the treble season back in 2001. That's what we don't have, that ruthlessness in this team. And until that changes, nothing will change.
Shout out, by the way, Hassan, for the hipster thread over there, the locomotive.
I mean, he was the guy with, I think it was Ruben Kazan when played them in the Europa League. He started for them. And he's one of the best center-backs in Russia. And he would start for us. I'm not even kidding. That's the part he would cost like 10 million euros. And he would walk into our side. I could pick a defensive from Hertha Berlin who would walk into our side. And it doesn't end there. This nonsense that we have, this excellent defense by Klopp, I mean, not obvious. No one else besides Klopp believes that. Probably Lovren, and Lovren's kids don't believe that.
Daddy, no. Anyway, yeah, please, Daddy, no. But no, yeah, the system is wrong. Like the setup, the way we're playing is wrong. Like that buck stops with Klopp because it's his tactics. Now, I mean, I was start thinking about this earlier, and I mean, is it a coincidence that since FSG took over, we haven't made any massive improvements on the pitch? Like, does the buck stop with them? Does it stop with the managers that we've had? Like, is it because they're not given any money to work with, or what? Like, a lot of what's going wrong now, I believe, is Klopp's arrogance in that it's his way and his way is right, or it's no way at all. Like, we haven't seen any plan Bs, but our style since the first sort of half season, and he took over, and the first half of last season, counter-pressing was such a huge thing and nobody could deal with it. We were just blowing teams away. They didn't know how to deal with that. And then we've stopped doing it. Like with an urgency. Like we choose our moments maybe a little bit better. But the way we played by counter-pressing constantly, we actually had less defending to do. Whereas now we've tried to refine it and be a little bit more picky and only counter-press in certain moments. And we're getting caught a lot more, which is kind of counterintuitive because it should be the other way around. Like I complained about the counter-pressing because we were getting left open too much, and it's just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So Klopp's way of playing, or the way he wants to play at least, because I still don't believe the players are capable of doing what he's telling them to do, which is why we look so bad. But yeah, it's just he needs to have some sort of alternative setup, whether that's a formation change, whether that's just can we switch to counter-attacking football totally and learn to defend for like just sit back and soak and just do something different other than what we're doing, because it obviously doesn't work. Like Lovren, for me, can be told to go find another club. I don't even care about selling him. Just go find somewhere else to play. Go play Sunday League or something for now. I don't care. Go, just disappear and get out of my sight. Mignolet needs to be told something very similar. And yeah, I mean, he had a period where he kind of pulled it together and seemed okay. But that just, I mean, today again just goes to show that he doesn't have the brain cells, doesn't have the consistency and the concentration needed to play at the top level. Because yeah, that cross that he missed today, wow, just wow. Like my 1-year-old doesn't miss the ball by that much when I kick it at him. Like he literally can only just about sit up and walk holding onto the sofa, and I can kick the ball to him and he doesn't miss it by that much. So I don't know how a professional can. It's disgusting. It really has.
So Hassan kind of veered into this topic a little bit earlier, and I wanted to touch on it now. So this is the big question. Do you guys still feel that Jurgen Klopp is the right man for this club, or do you feel that time is, or are we on the inevitable path to nowhere, which will eventually lead, maybe if not the end of this season, but at some point, Klopp getting the sack and us really have gone nowhere in his tenure. Paul, why don't we start with you, because I know you want to get in on this.
My sense is that it's going to have to take something really drastic for Klopp to become the right man for Liverpool. And I'm saying that in spite of the fact that I've got so much time from him. I really like him as a bloke. I was a huge fan of what he did at Dortmund, and he was one of the managers I wanted. But I make this point when people bring up Benitez. Managers have a sell-by date. And you can look at Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. Now, the reason that Arsene Wenger isn't as successful now as he was back in the mid-2000s is because the kind of thing that Wenger used to be able to do in terms of identifying players, in terms of setting up a team to play passing football, other coaches have become better than him at that. And so the value of Arsene Wenger to Arsenal Football Club has dropped. Now, I'm really beginning to worry that Klopp's in a similar situation. Counter-pressing, which Fergs was talking about before, was such a big thing for us last season. But have teams got his number now? Have teams figured out how to set up against Klopp? That's one of my big concerns, because the gegenpressing style was something that he really sold himself on. And it's when it worked at Dortmund, it really did work. He came within a whisker of reaching the very top of European football with that style. But it doesn't seem to be as effective anymore. I think teams have really got that figured out. And that's coupled with just this weird arrogance, some people have said, this complacency about the squad that he has, and this overestimation of his own abilities as a coach to bring acceptable results out of players that should have been told just to leave. If he's not going to be ruthless, and if he's not going to set this team up with a style that teams can't figure out, then I don't see really how we move on under Klopp. It's going to have to take a real attitude change, a sea change in terms of the way he's coaching this team and the way he's managing us for us to be successful under him. As far as I'm concerned, I just don't know how we're going to be successful under Klopp. And I've reached that stage now where it feels like it did under Dalglish. It feels like it did under Benitez. And I feel like soon his time's going to be up.
Hassan, I know you still believe that Klopp is the right guy. What gives you that confidence?
I still think, like last season, for me, he deserves praise for getting this group of players basically to a top 4 position. So I would still give him time in that regard, but he shouldn't be excused for the issues we have. We've conceded more goals at Crystal Palace this season, which is incredible. But I can understand what Paul said. Klopp is slowly disintegrating for the past 3 months, really. And I mean, I still think he can turn it around. At Dortmund, he managed to do that, but it came to after a winter break in which an idea change happened to Dortmund. And I wonder if today, because today he looked like, wow, this is bad. So I hope there's a reaction from him. But it might mean watching some awful football, because I remember Dortmund when they had that, it was a bizarre run in which no one knows how they ended up being like 16th or 17th at the table, because it made no sense. Even the expected goals had them at like 5th or 6th. Yeah, they were 17th. So what happened was that I think it was a game against Leverkusen or Gladbach, I forgot. And they had a pass accuracy percentage of 44% as a team. So I wonder if Klopp is deciding, right, we're gonna change things here a bit, but I don't know. The international break is coming soon, so we'll see what happens.
Fergs, Do you feel that Klopp is still the right guy? And by the way, just wanted to point out 44% is atrocious for pass completion.
Yeah, just a bit. I'm going to kind of piggyback off a little bit off of what Paul said here, in that sell-by date for managers is definitely a thing. Like, if we just go on recent history, well, sort of semi-recent history, Rafa, love the man, and he had great success with us as well. But after a couple of seasons, things got stale. People got really annoyed at his double DM and just not having anything going forward, and things kind of petered out. Spoke well, always said the right things, just the football didn't match it. I'll ignore Roy because that's a period I don't really want to talk about. Dalglish, briefly, again, I mean, he's always going to say the right things. He's a club legend, talks a great game. Really there. I don't really think he was given a fair chance. A lot of it comes down to that one transfer window we screwed up. Rodgers came in, sounded like a breath of fresh air. It was like listening to Shankly with his words. Obviously, performances didn't match up. And I'm not comparing Rodgers to Shankly there, by the way. Please don't kill me. It was just kind of the way he was speaking. Great philosopher in regards to football and tactics, or at least it sounded like. And we had a period where we looked pretty good and we were sticking teams away, looking great going forward. Same thing, always struggling. And then now with Klopp, he come in, had a honeymoon period, we looked okay, we're looking stale again. So yeah, I do think sell-by dates for managers is a thing. Like, they need to be able to stick with it and fresh. Like, there's only certain managers that seem to be able to have a specific way of playing that do not ever need to change and have limited success, so to speak. I mean, you have Barcelona tiki-taka, but that's kind of all because of the players that of that era and that specific style of play have kind of retired and gone elsewhere. Arsenal kind of played that way sort of as well, trying to walk the ball into the box, but teams got up to it. And then, I mean, obviously you have Fat Sam's teams and to just sit back and defend. And yeah, like, only certain managers can do it, style, and stick to it. And I just don't think Klopp can. Like, the German league is not the Premier League. Play it the same. Like, his style and the way he wanted to play looked great when we seemed to be able to do it. Now we can't. So I don't know if it's time for him to leave. I think he deserves a bit of a bit of time, really, to see if he can do something different and see if he can make it work. But he wouldn't get past the end of the season if things don't vastly improve. Like, if it doesn't kick up a notch over the next few weeks, I think he'd be lucky to see January through. But if it doesn't improve at all, end of the season, he can go for me if that's how it's going to be.
See, my concern about Klopp is, I totally hear everyone's concerns. My only concern is, if we get rid of him, I don't trust FSG to bring in the right guy. That's really my concern. My concern is more with FSG than it is right now with Klopp, because even if Klopp is taking the club nowhere, my concern is if we bring in another youth, or if we go the youth route and bring in another young manager, because right now there really isn't a manager in the market who would be of any stature to come here. Maybe Ancelotti, but I really don't know if he'd be interested in taking this job. But if we did somehow go for a younger manager, I don't want to regress again further than this. So my concern is more with FSG, because if they don't change expectations with regards to what a manager has to accomplish when they do come here, there's no point. Again, we'll be doing this same dance 3 years into the next manager's reign. So that is really my concern here. It's more on the shoulders of FSG right now, because I just don't trust them to bring in the right kind of people to overhaul the entire structure within the club, at least on the football side, to look to Get rid of Michael Edwards, get rid of Mike Gordon, get rid of all these people who have basically presided over a bang average staff, to be fair. And that's the way I look at it. It's bang average. They really haven't done much besides bringing the odd player in. Last season was Mane, this season was Salah. But the rest of it has been bang average. Wijnaldum average, Robertson average, Karius average, Joel Matip average. They're all average. So that's my concern. So on the one hand, while I do think perhaps we need a change, we do need to maybe move on from Klopp because we're really going nowhere. The next step that I have to look at is, who are we going to get in? And is there someone worth getting in right now? Is there even a young manager out there who you could say is ready for the step up? And I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, at least, who I can definitively state that this would be the right guy to take the club in the right direction, provided we surround him with the right infrastructure. Paul, you want to get in on this?
Yes, I'm about to sound like I want to have it both ways, but as critical as I have been of Klopp, at the very least, FSG put themselves in a position to attract Klopp. And what I mean by that is, Liverpool were not the only club that would have been interested in him, and Liverpool are not the only club that would have interested him as a manager. I think there was talk before Klopp joined us that Bayern Munich were probably earmarking him to take over. He had big clubs very interested in him, and we put ourselves in a position to bring in, who was at that point a big manager. I don't think it's panned out for him. But at the very least, we were able to compete for a manager that would have been wanted by teams like Bayern Munich. So I do think we've got the pull and power. I think there is obviously a lot more that FSG can do, and they could, as a lot of people have said, be putting a lot more pressure on Klopp and the transfer committee, if we still even have that, and the stats guys who identify the players. They could be doing an awful lot more. But I do think they can attract a manager. They were certainly in talks with Ancelotti. We all know that. And in spite of the fact that his latest outing at Bayern wasn't the best, I mean, to be fair, he still won the Bundesliga. I think he'd still be interested. He was interested 2 years ago. I can't see for any reason why he wouldn't still be interested now. And it comforts me to know that if we got rid of Klopp, there would at least be someone like him available. And in my opinion, certainly interested. Because Ancelotti is pure footballing royalty. He's one of the best ever, in my mind. Klopp's had a great career. He's won Bundesliga titles. He's won the German Cup. He's managed in a European Cup final, for God's sake. He's not an idiot. But someone like Ancelotti, to have him in our hot seat would feel like, for me, it would feel like a promotion. And I think that would be a realistic option. As for the young manager, I'm not quite sure who my preferred option would be if we did go down that path. But again, look at Spurs. They identified a brilliant young manager and backed him to the absolute teeth. And now look, they're one of the best teams in the league. For the past 2 or 3 seasons, they've had a say in the title race. They're going toe-to-toe with Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. They're dispatching Borussia Dortmund at a stadium they've hardly even played in with relative ease. That's the kind of thing that could await us if we did identify a good young manager and think, right, well, it's going to be a project. He needs backing. And obviously FSG have to give him that backing. But if we can identify a young manager with a good forward vision and who could be a breath of fresh air to the squad that we've got, I'd be supportive of that too. Whatever route we go down, at this point, something has to change. Whether it's Klopp changing his methods, changing his mind, which I'm not sure I can see, or a change of manager. But if we do opt for the second one, I don't think it would be as difficult to get the right manager in as people have been saying.
Fergs, why don't you give us your parting thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to quickly disappear off this. I think we're probably a little over-obsessed with having a big name manager. Maybe you'll have a little bit of extra draw with certain players. But again, we've never really been a team for signing the big star players, ever. So that's not how we've had our success in the past. I don't think that's how we'll have our success going forward. if we were to sign a young manager, I couldn't give you a name, but if we were to sign a young manager who's fresh, innovative, not afraid to do what needs to be done to ensure that you play the right brand of football, I have no problem with that whatsoever. Like, all these established big name managers have their own style, and they've been around for a while. Yeah, they've got the experience and maybe a little bit of extra tactical news and the experience in the big games, but those big managers are filtering out. Like, they're going to the second, third, fourth teams, and it's the newer ones are coming through and challenging. We need to get on board with that and make the most of it. FSG kind of see this club as a project, and or at least that's the way that it seems to me, based upon how we're going and what's happening in behind the club, behind the scenes, and whatever, and even the players on the pitch. We're getting the almost top players. We're getting the good and decent players, but never the top players. And maybe Salah's an exception, but again, yeah, that's based off on 1 or 2 good seasons at Roma. So it's, yeah, I have no problems with them wanting to bring in somebody fresh and just give them the chance. Like, why be bothered about big names? Like, no name is bigger than the club. That stands for anybody, whether that's the directors, the managers, the players, the backroom staff, celebs, pundits, whatever. It doesn't matter. Nobody's bigger than the club. Do what's right for us. Get the right people in who are going to do the right things for the club on the pitch, and just let that run its course. Like, you can't really go wrong with that.
All right, Hassan. Do you have any idea of managers? Since you know, I know you follow football pretty closely right now. So why don't you talk us through some of the names that you might be, you might consider in the hypothetical event that the Klopp did go.
Well, I mean, as I've said, I still haven't reached that point. But I would say maybe Laurent Blanc, who, well, he did a good job for PSG in general, although I think in Europe he failed sometimes to get his team through to the semifinals. I think, but you wonder about, other young managers. I think Sergio Conceição has done he's been good, really good so far for Porto, for example. Did well with Nantes last season. Philippe Cocu, who you might remember as a starting midfielder for the Netherlands. He has won the league twice in Holland with PSV, although I would pluck out their director of football, Marcel Brands, as well. I think you look at, I'm not sure, maybe Thomas Tuchel. He looked good. Well, but he had some arguments with the board eventually. So I'm not sure exactly who would be an option. If you want to go with if you want the hipster pick, maybe a guy like Jocelyn Gouvernec from Bordeaux, although I'm not sure he would cut it for a big team. So in reality, I'm not sure that the market is that open. If you want to, if I were to name one manager who I would say, right, we need him, probably Jardim from Monaco, but I'm not sure he would leave there.
What about Sarri?
Sarri, I think he needs to convince. He needs to convince me he can win. I think he set up his team really well. Napoli play some great football, but still they haven't won anything, and maybe they have flattered to deceive at times. I think when the occasion is big. Simone Inzaghi has done a really good job with Lazio. Luis Alberto and Lucas Leiva are 2 players who are key to a side that have a great chance at finishing in the top 4. So that's something. There's Carrera from Spartak Moscow, who won the league for them for the first time in God knows how many years. I'm not sure. Like, that's the job of football directors, competent ones, to say, right, these are the results. And for me to just, one summary of Liverpool would probably be, I've heard the story that apparently a scout was in a Roma game for Salah last season, and they saw Manolas and they were impressed, like it was the first time they watched him. which sort of sums up Liverpool FC, I guess, at the moment.
Yeah, we just hope that Mike Gordon doesn't throw his name into the hat. You know, that's what the hope is. Let's see what we can do now. You know, I think we've chatted quite a bit today regarding this poor performance and possibly you know, the future of Jurgen Klopp as well. So I think this is a good point to you know, just kind of end this one off. It's a bad weekend for Liverpool, but I want to thank you guys for joining, and you know, we'll pick it up next week possibly. Paul, you have any final thoughts?
The only final thought that I have, again, it's on the manager, and I've reached the point now where what I want to see us do with the season is get to January, if Klopp is still a manager, which he probably will be, and say, all right, you've got this January, sort it out, or that's it. Things have become that desperate. I think it's become that urgent that we make a big sea change in the staff, the way we play. Things need uprooting from top to bottom, and today really drove that point home for me.
I think, well, I mean, I'm not as down, I guess. There's some upsetting aspects of this team, but I still think that we've been a bit unlucky in some games that we could have won. However, January, I mean, at least a centre back and defensive midfielder, not even need to pay that much money for them. So, yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining, and we'll pick it up there. Have a good one.
You too. Pleasure.
You too. Goodbye.